Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. Hope everyone's doing good. It is Tuesday at about 8:45. The sun is supposed to be coming out today, slowly coming out here in little pockets. The forecast is not looking great again this week. Later on, I saw the forecast that Thursday through Sunday it's supposed to rain or chance of thunder showers, and but it's supposed to be pretty clear up until then. So that's wicked halfway decent. I'll take it. But I hope everyone's doing good. Thanks again to some new folks chiming in on this channel and liking this page or subscribing to it. It's it's a lot of fun. It's a hobby for me. Well, it's a little bit more than a hobby, but it's kind of a passion project. It's kind of therapeutic. I find when I don't do it, I I feel differently. I feel better when I do it, and it's just kind of a I don't know. It's kind of therapeutic too. But it's really cool when I can connect with other people who share the same love that I have for film. Because again, like I've said before, for me as a musician, it's such a huge inspiration for me, particularly around my band Quantum. It's the biggest source of inspiration. So I'm always checking out movies. I'm always seeking out movies. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to, because it's been a while, and I just hadn't had the time to really go up there yet, but I'm feeling the burn to go to Bull Moose. So I'm hoping to do that soon. It won't be this week, but it will happen eventually, and I'm really excited about it. It's been probably about a month or so, but I've still been buying lots of movies. I've been going to the Goodwill in Rockland I've gone probably about 3 times or so the last month, or they have a really great selection. I've been covering mostly lately the kind of the more bigger budget Hollywood movies that I also love. A lot of action movies. I'm going to be doing a show here on some of the James Bond movies. I just recently bought a few of those, starring Daniel Craig, who is my favorite. I've always been a huge James Bond fan. I've seen all of the movies. I I love the old school stuff, but Daniel Craig for me is probably the best. I started watching or not Quantum of Solace. Quantum of Solace is actually the one that I think is not very good in the series with Daniel Craig, but I started watching Casino Royale last night. I bought it on Blu-ray quite a few months ago, and the reason I started watching it last night, well, not only did I want to see it and watch it because I finally bought it. I've never seen it on Blu-ray. I just got Skyfall also on Blu-ray, which I've only seen once. Quantum of Solace I've seen quite a few times, and that movie is just so. I mean, cut that out. Not Quantum of Solace. Casino Royale is the movie that I've seen. I've seen that movie probably the most as far as the Daniel Craig James Bond movies. That movie is just so badass. I'm going to be doing a review on that soon. And the reason I finally sat down and watched it is I just recently bought Skyfall, which was Daniel Craig did 4 films. So, and the last one I think is really really great. It was kind of the love letter to him saying goodbye to the whole franchise. I saw that. I didn't see it in the theater. I don't think I did. Did I? No, I didn't get a chance to see it in the theater. But really awesome movie. I really think it's great. It's one of the best ones. It's probably the biggest, most explosive movie out of the movies he's done in the Bond franchise. but Casino Royale, I just started watching it last night, and I'm going to be doing a review. So I wanted to, before I watched for franchises, I like to watch if I acquire most of them or a few of them that I really love, or even all of them. When I do shows for this channel, I tried. I've been doing these kind of experiments while I'll watch them in succession, and it's really kind of a revelation for me because I have a different take on the experience, especially watching the film in succession and rediscovering certain films. Maybe a franchise. When it comes to a franchise, rediscovering a movie that I might have only seen once, and I really thought it was pretty good, but it grew on me. Or for instance, I did a coverage of the Psycho franchise quite a few months ago, and it didn't. I didn't realize for a while that that's actually a franchise. Obviously created by Alfred Hitchcock, starring Anthony Perkins, Janet Leigh. The first one being just a masterpiece, probably overall my favorite Hitchcock movie. But there's been about um, 5 movies in that franchise, and then also a television show. So I got it was yeah, it was last year. I bought a couple of the other movies. I bought like Psycho 2 and Psycho 3 on DVD or Blu-ray, and I rented a few of them too, I think. And I did a show where I watched them all in succession, and I did them in order. And I was really impressed by Psycho 2 and Psycho 3, especially Psycho 2. I was really blown away by how great of a film that was. I did see that a couple times when it came out. I think I even saw it in a theater when I was a little kid. And I always thought it was okay, but seeing it again in succession with, in the order of a franchise, I was really enamored with the movie and I really loved it. So that was a nice surprise. And then I also did that recently with the newer, more recent Star Wars films: Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, Rogue One, Solo. I bought a few of those movies on Blu-ray, Rogue One, and then I also bought the Last Jedi on Blu-ray. And I had only seen that once before, and I had mixed things about it. Force Awakens, I really love that movie, but I had a kind of a revelation when I decided to do a show on those movies in the later franchise, and I've had a whole different experience, and it was overall a very disappointing experience, and I don't really regard those movies as good as I don't regard them like I did, well, especially when it comes to Force Awakens. That movie's really dated. I had a lot of when I watched it again, and I've seen that movie a lot, and I have that on Blu-ray also, and I've had it on Blu-ray for a while. But when I watched it in this kind of grouping, watching the franchise, I had this totally different experience from it. So that's one thing I like about experimenting with doing this kind of a thing. And so I'm doing that right now with the James Bond movies. And, so far I'm watching Casino Royale right now, kind of midway through it. And I just think that movie is just such a masterpiece. It still remains for me the best Bond movie overall. And Daniel Craig for me is the best Bond, hands down. I like it because it's a lot grittier, it's a little darker, it's a little bit more realistic, but it's just kind of a breathtaking movie. So today's show is on a franchise I never really thought I'd be talking about, and especially a movie that I never thought I'd like it. I never thought I'd like this, like watch it and love it as much as I did. And that is the Fast and the Furious franchise. And I've always, kind of for the most part discarded that franchise. I've always liked the first one, starring Paul Walker and of course Vin Diesel. I've always liked that one, guns and babes and fast cars and, over the top action. That's a good movie. I've always thought it's, for what it is, it's super entertaining. but it's also an insane franchise. It obviously had a deep end commercial impact with an audience, huge franchise. It eventually evolved into this giant franchise. And I've seen most of the other films, and I kind of feel for the most part the movies just get more and more ridiculous and over the top. And but I also feel at the same time that's kind of the point of what they're trying to do with the franchise. But and I bought a few of those movies. I bought the Fast and the Furious, the which I believe is like the third or the fourth one, which is kind of the reintroduction of the original cast. And then I also bought Fast Five, which is there's I think there's like 10 of them. But again, overall, I feel like most of the movies are just pure popcorn, which can be good, but they're kind of stupid. They're big and dumb, and they progressively get worse. And I think to a degree, they're kind of unwatchable and really kind of dismissible and forgettable. Kind of like a lot of the films. I kind of feel like it's similar to some of the films in the Halloween franchise. I think some of them just progressively get worse and really dumb. There's some really great ones. Overall, I love that franchise a lot more, but they get pretty dismissible and forgettable and just bigger and dumber and less cohesive with any kind of story, that kind of thing. But I it's funny because I kept hearing that through a couple of guys that I watch on YouTube that Fast Five, one guy in particular, or a couple of people, had he had regarded Fast Five, Fast Furious Five, Fast and the Furious Five or Part Five as being one of the greatest action movies ever. Like just incredible, like pure, a pure spectacle and just completely breathtaking on an action level. And I love really great action movies. If there's a good story, hopefully that goes along with it. I'm all about the story first and foremost as a fan of film. Doesn't matter what style or genre, but if it's got a pretty good story, and the thing I always talk a lot about is uh, if the film has atmosphere. Those for me are the biggest selling points. Everything else is kind of secondary. But I had heard that Fast Five is like not only the best one in the Fast and the Furious franchise, but that it's so good that it's kind of it's its own thing. It's a standalone movie. It's a movie that you can just take and watch, and you don't have to know anything about any of the other movies. There's like 10 or 11, I think, and you don't, it's purely on its own because it's not only is it the best one in the franchise. This is at least what I've heard that it's like a standalone film. Like for what it is, it's just like just an amazing action movie. And when I kept hearing about it, and I had never seen Fast Five. And it's funny because I was really reluctant to see it because I'm not a huge fan of the franchise. Like again, I like the first one. I think the first one is super fun and totally entertaining. But when I was in one of my trips to Goodwill down in Rockland, and they have a killer Blu-ray selection. I have bought so many movies there just in the last month that has just been super awesome. Really great Blu-ray selection, and a lot of the movies that they have there are unused, are unopened. They're still sealed, and they're super cheap, and I'm just amazed. So I go there. I try to hit that place up. I'm down in that area fairly often, so I try to stop in there and hit it up, and I'm always very impressed with it. And the last time I was down there, they had Fast Five on Blu-ray, so I snatched it up. And then I also bought Part Four, which is just called Fast and the Furious. and I watched that one first, and that one is kind of again big and dumb and kind of stupid. It's okay. It's kind of entertaining, but the effects and the whole all of the scenarios are just so like ridiculous that there's no you don't get a sense of really getting lost in the spectacle of the action because that's what those movies what the intention of the franchise is. And it's so over the top and so utterly ridiculous and you can just kind of tell that it's not grounded in reality. It doesn't have that grittiness to it. So it's okay. It's all right, but I'm not a big fan. But I did watch um, Fast Five, and I bought this at the same time on Blu-ray, and it was super cheap. It's a really big collection. It's got two discs, a whole bunch of special features, and I watched this again in succession of the other one, Part Four, and I was completely blown away by this movie. And I have to say, what I heard about this movie and the hype around it, I have to say it's without a doubt, the best one, the best movie in the Fast and the Furious franchise, without a doubt. I truly think that this movie is a standalone movie. You can just watch this, and I think this is, I think, one of the greatest action movies I've ever seen. I never thought I'd be saying that, but I have to say that this is when it comes to the action, and even the movie itself is actually pretty good. The story's pretty good, the acting is good. It's pretty solid. It gives you just enough backstory, with the characters, where they're coming from, where they're going. There's a the it's a the original cast from the original film is in this, and but from an action standpoint, it is it's easily one of the greatest action movies I've ever seen in my life. It's breathtaking. And again, I never thought I'd be saying that about one of these movies, but this movie is just so unbelievable and so entertaining on so many levels, and it kicks so much ass. And I have to say, getting this on Blu-ray is ridiculous. Like, it's one of the best quality Blu-rays I've ever seen. And talk about pure escapism and talk about total immersion. It's amazing. And you know, this movie came out, and I just saw it again a couple of weeks ago. I just bought it. I just bought it like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It came out in 2011, and it was directed by Justin Lin. The music is fantastic too, by Brian Tyler, and the cast is fantastic. Paul Walker, Guy Gabat, aka Wonder Woman, Vin Diesel, and Dwayne Johnson's in this. I've always been a huge Dwayne Johnson fan. And my God, this movie is just so badass. And again, I just me saying that, I'm really surprised. It's kind of shocking to me and I was really after I finished watching it. I finished it. I watched it last week, and I've been wanting to get to this movie, but some other things got in the way or came up, and so I was looking forward to talking about this today. And again, this was a movie I never thought I would enjoy as much as I did, but it's easily one of the greatest action movies I've ever seen. And I love too. It's way over the top, and there is so much stuff going on the screen. But even though it's over the top, there's a level of tension and suspense that is just like an element of danger that is so turned up at such a high level. But there's also a level of where it feels kind of like it's set in reality. It's not so it's a perfect balance of something so grandiose and over the top, but yet it's kind of grounded in reality. And the the design, the effects, the CGI, the stunt work is seamless. The use of like computer generated versus practical effects. This was like kind of before CGI, so there is some in this movie because it's like right at the cusp, but they had to rely on computer graphics and those kinds of things back then, which when you watch a lot of movies from like the late 90s to during that time period, it's kind of terrible. One movie that I think that did not age well and is impossible to watch. I feel just because the the technology just wasn't there, and they decided to just use what they had, and it's so awful. Is The Mummy with Brendan Fraser? Like, if you try watching that movie, and that movie came out obviously a few years before this, maybe 8 years. But if you try watching that movie now, I like that movie to a degree growing up and stuff, but it's kind of entertaining, But watching it now, it's so bad. The CGI and the effects in it are just so utterly terrible. But with Fast Five, it's seamless. It's totally seamless. Like, you can't tell. Everything feels real. It's like the way they were able to blend generated technology, especially when it was done in 2011. The early parts of CGI with live action is just incredible. It's totally seamless. And again, it's way over the top, but it still has you still as a viewer, and at least from my perspective watching this movie, it still had an element of being grounded and had enough of a sense of reality in it that it wasn't ridiculous, and it just totally blended, or it was just a really great example of those two things, all those elements coming together. And again, awesome. And I have to say, one of the best. This is one of the best Blu-rays I own, just because of the experience. I'm looking forward to watching this again. But and again, you can discard, you can throw out, burn the rest of the movies in the franchise, as far as I'm concerned. And this is truly a standalone movie, and you don't need to know. That's the thing that's really great about this movie is you don't need to know anything about any of the other movies. Like, it's really great because it gives you a nice introduction to these characters that have already been established for quite a few years. You don't need to know anything else. You don't, the timeline, the basic framework of the story. You get all of that here. You get just enough, and it totally fits the definition of a movie that is purely a standalone film. One other movie I think a movie that is like this, that is has so many great elements, but in this in a massive franchise, the movie is totally its own thing. Is Thor Ragnarok? I kind of think it's probably the best overall, the best Marvel movie out of I don't know how many, 30, 40. But it's such a great movie that you can pick that off the shelf and not know anything about any of the other movies in the Marvel universe. You could go into it not even knowing who Thor is, for example. And it's purely, I think, a standalone film. It's kind of a masterpiece. And I feel like that's what this is for the Fast and the Furious franchise. So I highly recommend. You can throw out all the other movies, but check this one out because this movie is so badass. So yeah, so surprised by how much I enjoyed it, and looking forward to seeing it. I'd never seen it before. There's a couple of the movies in the franchise that I haven't seen, and I probably won't see them. But I had never seen this before. I only seen it the one time, and blown away, blown away. So yeah, thanks again. This is Jason Dean. So definitely check out Fast Five from 2011. You won't be disappointed. Have a great day, and we will see you next time. Peace.